Between 1978 and 1990, a man named Andrei Chikatilo murdered and mutilated at least 52 women and children across the Soviet Union. He became known as the Butcher of Rostov. This chart tracks his crimes over a 12-year span. The victim count accelerates rapidly, year after year, unchecked by the massive state police apparatus. But Chikatilo left evidence. His freedom is represented by this expanding void over his peak years, a fatal investigative blind spot. To understand how a killer of this magnitude hid in plain sight, we have to look past the man himself and dissect the severe forensic limitations and institutional rigidity of the 1980s Soviet state. When the manhunt began in the late 1970s, investigators were operating in a highly controlled ideological environment. The Soviet bureaucracy officially refused to acknowledge the existence of serial killers. The state apparatus viewed this type of crime as a purely capitalist phenomenon that simply could not occur under their system. Because of this ideological denial, early investigations were incredibly fragmented. Local police units were siloed, failing to share crime scene data or connect patterns across different jurisdictions. What should have been a coordinated national manhunt devolved into a series of disjointed local inquiries. The institutional rigidity of the state actively shielded Chikatilo from detection. By the mid-1980s, the body count had grown too large to ignore. The state finally recognized a serial pattern and intensified their search. At the time, the primary biological tool available to investigators was basic ABO blood typing, analyzed from fluids left at the crime scenes. This diagram illustrates a rare biological anomaly that derailed the entire case. Chikatilo's blood type did not match the blood type found in his other bodily secretions at the crime scenes. Because these two samples showed a glaring mismatch, investigators were forced by their own protocols to cross him off their suspect list, even after they had brought him in for questioning. Relying on a flawed biological metric weaponized primitive science, giving a prolific killer a perfect alibi. If we pause the timeline and look at this case today, we ask how modern forensic standards would process that exact same biological anomaly. Modern DNA profiling completely bypasses easily confused blood groups. As this animation shows, we now isolate unique, undeniable genetic markers that act like a biological barcode. Instead of slow, isolated paper files, that unique sequence instantly aligns with a digital database grid, cross-referencing across national jurisdictions in seconds to light up a perfect match. Against a modern DNA sequence, the rare biological trait that freed him in the 1980s would have been completely irrelevant. Modern forensic science eliminates these biological blind spots, proving exactly how close investigators were to catching him if the technology had only been there. In 1990, the massive search finally began to shift. Investigators stopped relying solely on rudimentary biology. They introduced modern psychological profiling and intensive, coordinated physical surveillance across major public transit hubs, like the vast transport networks seen here in Rostov. This pivot toward behavioral tracking and coordinated observation finally cornered Chikatilo, leading to his arrest and trial, ending the 12-year manhunt. The adaptation and evolution of investigative strategy broke through the state's bureaucratic rigidity to stop the Butcher of Rostov. The tragic legacy of the Chikatilo files is measured in the 52 victims who paid the price for a system that was too rigid and a science that was too primitive. Today, this case stands as a permanent historical warning against institutional denial and the failure to adapt to scientific advancement. Modern forensic science provides a vital, necessary safeguard, ensuring that a 12-year manhunt of this scale can never happen again.